Hey guys, if you come to Japan for a short term, you probably won't notice terribly much what I'm about to talk about, but if you come here and live here long term, you most likely will. And that is, sometimes we come across things here that don't seem real logical or seem to be not the best way to do things or not the best way to approach things. So I just want to clarify a couple of things first. Again, as with all these styles of videos, they're just big generalizations. Not all Japanese people are the same. Not all people from other countries are the same, of course. We get a whole variety of people, so this doesn't apply to everybody. These are just general observations about different cultures. So it's just what a person might observe if they're in Japan. So I'll actually start outside Japan first, and I'll start with Australia, and I'll just to show perspective on this, and that is my thinking about some parts of Australian culture is that that Australian people are good people, but many of them do bad things. Now, stick with me, but you might recognise some of this stuff from your own countries as well. So, for example, in Australia, it's not uncommon for people to take home pens from work, which, it's really stealing. Usually, sometimes the boss says, here, take home some pens, but more often than not, it's really breaking the rules and it really is stealing, But taking home pens from work, no big deal. Everybody does it. And there's a lot of stuff like that where there's good people doing bad things. More than 50% of insurance claims in Australia are fraudulent, contain some aspect of fraud, which means more than half the people that make an insurance claim for burglary or theft or for fire or something make some aspect of fraud. So that they'll say the shoes were newer than they were, or there was 2 pairs of them or something, which means they're basically lying and they're basically defrauding the insurance company. But again, good people, but they reason it that, I pay a lot of money in insurance premiums, so if I can get a little bit extra back from the insurance company, then that's a good thing. So they justify it to themselves. So there's a lot of stuff like this. I could go on all day about the examples of this stuff where, they're good people, but they justify some bad behaviours to themselves and do some bad behaviours. The reason I'm saying this is because I'm sure most people from most countries might be able to recognise that from their own countries. In Japan, that's not the case. These guys are incredibly honest. They give high school kids here sets of questions to do the homework, and they also give them a booklet of answers. And then after the kids have done their homework, they're expected to mark their own homework. So, sort of the red mark for the incorrect answer, and they do. If they'd given me the answers when I was in high school, I would have sat there and looked at the homework and looked at the answers, and I would have got 100% correct. But these guys, the kids here don't do that. They do the right thing. So generally, again, big generalisations. Talking to you guys, I've just missed my turn. Ah dear. So, whoa, hello. Okay, so yes. So in Australia and many other countries, I'm sure we can all find examples of good people doing bad things. Now in Japan, what we often find is intelligent people doing stupid things. And I think I've heard some people observe that there's not a lot of common sense in Japan, and it sounds pretty harsh. The reason I started with my example of my old country first is because no country's perfect. Every country obviously has good and bad things going on, or not necessarily good or bad, but just stuff going on. So no country is perfect. But the reason I start with my own country is because it's true. It contains, good people, but lots of them do bad things, and I think most countries are the same. Japan contains a lot of very intelligent people, but a lot of them do very stupid things. And I think part of it is because, and this is something that if you live in Japan long term, this can drive you crazy. Kids driving past in the cars, standing up on the passenger seat of cars, and it just goes on and on. The stuff that you see here, that just the bureaucracy and the ridiculousness You know, when there's just ridiculous systems that everybody here will agree. You say to them, what's with that system? You know, that you've got to have a piece of paper for your car, and it has to have a map on it showing where your car's parked at night, and you've got to give it to the police, and they've got to sign it and keep it in a box. What's that about? And everybody agrees that it's stupid, but they don't change the system. And I think, as you've seen on other videos, the way the system works here is from when people are small, from when people are children, they're encouraged to do things the way things are done. And that's the whole system's geared for that. The whole way of life in Japan is geared towards teaching everybody or informing everybody of how they should do everything. So that is generally, again, big generalizations, but this is generally the case, is that there's already a way of doing stuff, and that's the way we'll do it. And we don't question it, and we're not looking for change. And that's why often I get comments on videos of people saying, oh, I want to come to Japan and teach them where they're going wrong with the japan-glish, or I want to come to Japan and teach them this, or I want to come to Japan and teach them that. They're not interested, guys. To a certain extent, they're interested in hearing about new stuff or different stuff or ideas from overseas, and there's TV shows in Japan with showing stuff from other countries, you know, with new innovative stuff, and Japanese people go, oh, that's really interesting, but then they don't change and do it that way, you know. And it's like, again, intelligent people. So if you point out, you know, you realise that we had 3 meetings and we spoke for 6 hours about that thing that we eventually did that took 1 hour. You know, do you realise that we spent 6 hours talking about something that took 1 hour to do? And they'll say, yes, yes, yes. And you say, it's strange, isn't it? They say, yes, yes, yes. And that's just the way it is. There's no, this society is not about looking for a new way to do things. And it's not about rewarding people who find new ways to do things. And it's not about that. It's about conforming and doing things the way they're done. Usually, again, not always the case, but usually is the case. And this results in this situation where, you know, very, very intelligent people are doing stuff that just isn't necessarily the best way to do it. Sometimes, I mean, most of the stuff here is brilliant. I mean, there's a reason that people like me live here. It's because it's a wonderful, wonderful place to live. You know, I'd prefer to live here with the smart people doing some stupid stuff than living in Australia with the good people doing bad stuff. Breaking into my house and stealing my car and vandalising stuff and carrying on, you know. So it's a choice thing, you know. There's a reason that people live here. It's a wonderful place to live. But if you live here long term, this will drive you crazy. Sometimes there will be things that just, you know, the kids on the seat drives me crazy, you know, seeing, you know, 2-year-old children standing on the passenger seat of the car with their face pressed against the windscreen, and mum driving along texting someone on the phone. It's like, that kid's going to die, you know. There's a good chance that child is going to die. So there is a lot of stuff like that that'll just drive you crazy, you know, if you live here long term. It's just the way it is, and you just have to accept it, and you just have to accept there's nothing you can do about it. There really isn't. You can have some input and control in your own life to a certain extent. You know, you can control what you do to a certain extent. Like if you're living alone in your apartment or in your house, you can control what you do in your apartment or your house, you know, as far as your routines and that sort of stuff. But you really have to conform. You know, you really have to conform. It's, you know, we just mentioned recently about the garbage recycling thing. You know, someone, a Japanese person here told me once that when recently I left something out for the rubbish that wasn't really in that right category, sat there for a week, and I got told, because I left it there for a week and didn't go and collect it, I got told I think like a criminal. And what I said was, I'm leaving it there to see if the city take it. I want to see if the city takes it because it's rubbish. And even though they're saying it's not in the right category, I want to see what they do about it. And this person said to me, oh, you're thinking like a criminal. Because that's the way the Japanese people see it. You don't test the system, you don't push the system. If there's something stupid in the system, you don't draw attention to it, you just go with it. And I've had this as well. I've had where I've been having conversations, not just once, many times, with really intelligent people about the Japanese people about this topic, and They'll agree with me. Sometimes if we're talking about something that's really, I say to them, have you thought about this? You know, you got to be careful who you say this to, because it can really piss people off. Same as if I came to your country and started to be critical of your country. You know, I can imagine you could get a bit emotional about it too. So you got to be very careful. But what happens is if you do say to somebody, hey, have you ever thought about how ridiculous that is, that system, or the way that we do this, or that piece of paper that we fill out and then we go and put it in that box and no one ever reads it? And they'll say, shogunai. It's just the way it is. And it's because, you know, the smart people here realise that that's the only way to look at it. The smart people here realise that there's no point. There's no point in challenging the system. There's no point in questioning the system, because they know that that doesn't work here. You know, in some countries, you know, if there's some ridiculous thing and you leave something out for the rubbish guy and he doesn't take it, you leave it there long enough, maybe they will take it. They'll go, oh, we got to remove this. Not here. Not here. You can't challenge the system like that here. So it's just a different way of thinking. So the only solution to this is just to go with it. And it is frustrating, because some of the things, if something's not terribly rational, or it doesn't make sense, you know, the lack of common sense, that's the thing. If there's something that's a little bit outside the box, something that's doesn't quite fit into the usual category, something a bit different, trying to approach it with a different solution or find a different answer to it is not the way to go. It won't be accepted. It just won't be accepted. So we have to do the accepting. You know, we have to say, okay, that's pretty ridiculous. Where it's most difficult, if you're just standing back and watching something that's ridiculous, you know, you can bite your tongue and go, oh, well, that's pretty ridiculous, but anyway, that's just the way it is. Where it's the most difficult is where we've got to do it ourselves. Is it when we're part of a group, or we've got to do something. Part of a group, well, you're always part of a group here. You're part of a neighbourhood, or you're part of a city, or you're part of a, you know, some sort of group or another. If you're here, you're part of a group. It's just the way it is. And if there is something ridiculous, you've just got to go with it. And that can be difficult, you know, particularly if you know there's a better way and you find yourself doing something that's a bit silly and you think, geez, you know, so much better just to do that. Particularly if it's something you've done before that you've got experience with, you know, from other places. It makes it difficult. So, but again, it's just the way it is, guys. And, you know, again, people can do what they want when they come here. Japan's a very free country and very accepting, and you can do your weird thing if you want to and not conform. But as I've mentioned hundreds of times before, it won't do you any good in the long run. You might get away with it, you know, they'll stand back and watch you do your strange thing, and you might get away with it, but it's more likely that it's going to cause some hassle for you down the track. You're better off just going with it. And as hard as that is to do, you're better off just going with it. And you're best off not drawing attention to it. Like I've said, I've talked to some very intelligent people about some of these topics. They don't want to hear about it. They don't want to hear you pointing out, because the way they see it is it's unnecessarily uncomfortable for them. If you draw attention to something that is a bit silly, you know, that's a bit irrational, and say, why do we do this stupid thing here? Why is that? You know, they don't see any benefit in talking about it, because they know it's not going to change, and all it does is makes them feel bad, and they see that as being pretty uncivilized. And I've had people get pissed off with me where I've raised topics with people before and say to them, what is with that? And what's going on with that? And they'll go, shogunai, you know, and get a little bit emotional about it, because they're like, what's the point of this complaining? You know, this isn't helping anybody. So, yeah, I guess. So, I guess the point of this video, I guess, is to point out that, yeah, if you live here long term, you will experience this. If you live here long term, you will experience frustrations with stuff that's not logical, or that, you know, where there's some silly situation where there's no common sense and nobody steps forward and says, hey, let's do this a better way, or, you know, nobody's going to do that. So it gets frustrating, and that compounds. If you live here long term, year after year after year, and you have these things compounding, this is often why most foreigners that come and live in Japan long term go home at some stage in their life, is because they get too frustrated with these sorts of things, you know. They decide living with living with good people who do bad things in another country is easier than living here, where people don't do bad things, but they do irrational things. And it drives you crazy, because what happens is, if you're thinking that something is strange and ridiculous, but everybody else just accepts it as being normal, after a while it can leave you feeling like you're crazy, because everybody else thinks it's okay. You're the only one that's got a problem with it. And if that happens a few hundred times or a few thousand times, it can leave you feeling like you're crazy. So yeah, I guess the point of the video is, be aware. If you're coming here long term, you will be noticing that, you'll be experiencing it. And then, really guys, as tempting as it is, I mean, I can't help myself now and again. I've got to talk to somebody, you know, here there'll be some intelligent person or somebody. I've got to say, hey, look, really, have you ever thought about that, you know? But it's not worth it. It's not smart. The smartest thing to do is just accept it all, because you're not going to change any of it. Nobody's going to go, hey, that's a great idea, and then go off and tell the rest of the world, you know, the rest of Japan, hey, look, that foreigner's got a great idea, let's do it his way. It's not going to happen. It's never going to happen. You're never going to change. People that come in and think they're going to change the way things are done here, or, you know, change something, even in their, not going to happen. Forget it. You're kidding yourself. So you're best off just accepting it and not saying anything, because they'll get sick of you really quick if you keep drawing attention to stuff, you know, how ridiculous different things are. They'll just get sick of you. You just got to accept it and go, that's just the way it is. And in the end, it's your choice, you know. If you can live where you want to live. If you choose to live here, then you just got to live here and accept it as it is. And you know, if you can't do that, then you should go back to wherever you came from and you know, and live that life, you know, I guess. So, anyway, I hope you found that a little bit interesting, and I hope you found the drive a little bit interesting. Better watch this driving around talking to you guys. I forget where I am. More videos coming soon.